Think about the last time you felt instantly at ease with someone, maybe a neighbor, a coworker, or even a barista who somehow made the awkward line feel shorter. Often what's happening under the surface is the mirror technique, a subtle, non-verbal echo that says, "I get you." The mirror technique isn't mimicry or a performance. It's quiet empathy made physical. Psychologists call it limbic resonance, a fancy way of saying two nervous systems start to sync through tiny behaviors. When you naturally match someone's posture, speech tempo, or energy level, their brain registers familiarity and safety. You lean when they lean, breathe when they breathe, pause when they pause. The air changes, conversation loosens. How to use it without sounding robotic? Start small. Mirror broad things first. If they sit back and cross their legs, don't immediately copy that exact pose. Match the openness or closedness. If they speak slowly and softly, lower your tempo and volume a notch. These are signals, not prescriptions. Match breathing and tempo. Breathing is one of the stealthiest connectors. If someone talks in short bursts, mirror that rhythm. If they take long, thoughtful pauses, give them the same space. Mirror posture and energy, not exact gestures. If they're animated, be more expressive. If they're calm and measured, dial down the theatrics. That avoids the uncanny valley of mimicry. Use facial attunement. A gentle nod when they tell a story. A soft smile when they're pleased. These micro-responses cue understanding without stealing the spotlight. A simple practice. Next time you're in a relaxed setting, a coffee date, a casual meeting, pick one element to mirror for a few minutes. Match their eye contact length. Mirror your breathing. Notice how the atmosphere shifts. It should feel natural, not like you're acting. If it feels forced, gently stop. Presence matters more than technique. Beware the traps. Used mechanically, mirroring comes off as fake or manipulative. Don't mirror negative states with the intent to fix someone. Matching anger or panic can intensify it. Cultural differences matter too. What reads as friendly in one culture might be intrusive in another. And power dynamics change everything. Mirroring a boss or a distressed person requires extra sensitivity. When done with care, mirroring subtly signals, "I understand you," and that reminder of familiarity opens doors, smoother conversations, deeper trust, less friction. The trick is presence. Your posture, your attention, your genuine curiosity. Practice that, and mirroring stops being a tactic and becomes a natural way you connect. That kind of calibrated presence is exactly what we'll build on in the next section. The yes ladder. Think of agreement like a tiny elevator. Each yes takes you one floor higher. Agreement is addictive, literally. When someone says yes, the brain releases a little hit of dopamine. That small reward makes you feel good and nudges you towards saying yes again. That's the core of the yes ladder. Start small and harmless. I'll often open with something everyone can agree on, a shared truth, a light question, or a casual observation. Crazy busy week, right? We all want things to be simple, don't we? That coffee smells amazing. Each of those is easy to agree with, and each yes primes the brain for the next one. It's not about tricking anyone, it's about finding rhythm. Psychologists call this commitment momentum. Once people identify, even subtly, as the kind of person who agrees, they want to stay consistent with that identity. If you've nodded along 3 times, you're more likely to nod on the 4th. That's how small affirmations snowball into bigger commitments. I've used it in teams and in everyday conversations. When a colleague agrees that speed matters, they're more open to agreeing that we should change our process. You nod together on the small things, then move smoothly to larger ones. This pattern feels smooth because our brains prefer harmony to dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that shows up when our actions and beliefs clash, is something we naturally try to avoid. Saying yes creates flow, and flow creates trust. The person who led the yeses is no longer an opponent, but someone on the same team. A few practical cues. Ask questions that almost invite agreement. We both want reliable results, right? Make observations anyone can accept. Looks like traffic is worse than usual today. And use shared values. We all want what's best for the client. After 2 or 3 easy yeses, make your next point slightly larger. Propose a small commitment, like a short meeting or a trial run. Each accepted step builds commitment momentum toward the outcome you need. Important to stress, this isn't manipulation, it's using how humans naturally sync up. When you agree with someone, you're building a bridge. If you feel uneasy, step back. The technique only works when both sides genuinely benefit. In the next section, we'll take that momentum and look at how to turn it into clear, actionable agreements without losing that human rhythm. The power of pause. Think about the last time a meeting went sideways because someone talked too fast or a conversation felt rushed and thin. I used to be the one who filled every gap, nervous about the silence, afraid someone would think I didn't know what I meant. Then I learned a simple trick that changed everything: pause. Silence is influence in disguise. When you pause before speaking, people don't hear uncertainty. They hear intent. The brain is wired to read speed as anxiety and stillness as control. Slow down, and you instantly look more composed. That's not just intuition. Negotiation research shows a 3-second pause after you speak or ask a question measurably raises how intelligent and confident you appear. 3 seconds sounds tiny, but in a conversation, it's enormous. A pause does more than change perceptions. It changes physiology. When you stop, your breathing evens out. The other person's breathing often follows. That's mirror neurons at work. Your calm becomes contagious. I remember one client, mid-presentation, used to rush through slides and lose the room. I told her to stop between points, breathe, and look up. The room quieted, people leaned in, and her message landed. It wasn't magic. It was nervous systems syncing. Don't mistake this for hesitation. A pause isn't giving ground, it's punctuation for authority. Think of your sentences like written language. Commas and periods give meaning. The spoken pause is your full stop. Every pause holds weight because it gives others time to absorb meaning. Say the line, "Stop," and let the air carry your intent. The silence creates context for your words. It lets listeners finish the thought you started and often makes them agree with you out loud. Practical ways to use it. After a question, ask it, then count slowly to 3 in your head. The answer that follows will be richer. Before a key point, take a breath, then deliver. The contrast makes the point feel inevitable. After you've made your main claim, wait. People will either nod or begin to counter. Both are useful information. In interviews or negotiations, let the silence sit after offers or concessions. It compels the other side to fill the gap, often with more than you expected. It takes practice because our instinct is to fill the void. Start small. Practice a 3-second pause in conversation tonight. At the dinner table, on the phone, in a team chat. Notice how it changes responses. Your silence will feel intentional, not awkward. Over time, those small, still moments become your invisible authority. Words are the surface. Silence is the gravity beneath them. Speak, stop, and let that gravity do the work. Use their name. Try this next time you meet someone. Say their name and then actually listen. A person's name is weirdly powerful. It's literally the brain's favorite sound. When you hear your own name, parts of the brain that map identity and belonging light up. That's not fluff, it's biology. Saying someone's name signals recognition at a deep level. It says, plainly, "I see you." But here's the catch. Sincerity matters more than frequency. If you pepper a conversation with someone's name like it's a marketing hook, "Great point, John. Absolutely, John. Thanks, John." It shifts the signal from recognition to manipulation. People can smell that fake attention. Instead, sprinkle names like a chef seasons a dish. Enough to enhance, not overwhelm. Simple places to use a name effectively. At the start of a conversation. "Morning, Maya." That 1-inch pause after the name helps anchor attention. When you thank someone, "Thanks so much for that, Carlos." It makes the gratitude feel directed and real. At the close. "Talk soon, Aisha." It turns a generic goodbye into a personal promise. Using a name grounds attention. It pulls someone out of autopilot and makes them present. It's a tiny, ancient way of saying you're not background noise. There's also chemistry behind it. The sound of your own name can trigger small releases of dopamine and oxytocin, the same molecules tied to pleasure and safety. That's why being addressed by name feels warm and human. Practical tips so it doesn't feel forced. Learn to pronounce it. If you're unsure, ask early and get it right. Nothing kills connection faster than mangling a name. Match tone to context. A crisp, "Thanks, Eva," in a meeting. A softer, "Hey, Ben," in a one-on-one. Don't use it to fill silences. Use it to direct attention or to acknowledge presence. I remember a time in a coffee shop when the barista handed me my drink and said my name with real eye contact. It was 5 seconds of recognition, and suddenly the whole exchange felt easier. That's the power we're talking about. Small, human, effective. So next conversation, try it deliberately but subtly. Say their name at the start. Tuck it into a genuine thank you and close with it. You'll notice people lean in more, and you'll also feel a little more connected. Simple, ancient, and surprisingly effective. The 5-1 ratio rule, a deceptively simple idea with serious power. For every one negative interaction you have with someone, you need 5 positive ones to keep the relationship healthy. It's not sentimental, it's math. Our brains are wired with a negativity bias, which means bad moments register more strongly than good ones. One sharp word, one cold look, one dismissive comment weighs more than a handful of tiny kindnesses unless you deliberately stack the positives. Think of your relationship like a joint bank account of trust. Compliments, laughter, small acts of care, making coffee, sending a quick "thinking of you" text, sharing a goofy meme. Those are emotional deposits. Criticism, sarcasm, ignoring someone, or public shaming are withdrawals. Too many withdrawals and the account goes bankrupt. People stop trusting that the other person has their back, and even honest feedback starts to feel like an attack. This isn't vague advice from a self-help book. Psychologists who study long marriages found that this ratio predicts longevity more accurately than personality tests. That's huge. It means warmth and positivity aren't optional extras. They're a structural requirement for lasting closeness. I want to make this personal, because it's easy to nod and then return to the same old habits. I remember a stretch where I was living with a partner and we hit a rough patch. One small criticism from me would spiral, and for days, the mood stayed flat. What changed wasn't a dramatic gesture. It was consciously adding tiny deposits. A sincere compliment before breakfast, a laugh shared over a dumb TV show, a hand on the small of the back when passing in the hallway. Those little things didn't pretend the problems weren't there, but they made it safe to bring them up, to be honest, without shutting each other down. Important note, this isn't fake positivity. You're not supposed to plaster on sunshine to cover up real issues. The point is balance. The consistent background hum of kindness that makes truth safe to hear. When trust is well-funded, a critique is read as helpful. When it's empty, the same critique feels like a final straw. Practical ways to use the rule. Notice your balance rather than tallying scores. If you know you had a tense exchange, make an effort to add small, genuine positives after. A heartfelt, "I appreciate you," or something you know will make them smile. In workplaces, managers who mix constructive feedback with recognition keep teams resilient. With friends, a quick check-in text after a disagreement goes a long way. So next time things get rocky, don't try to fix everything with one big talk. Make 5 small deposits first. The math is simple, but the result is durable. More safety, more honesty, and relationships that actually survive the hard moments. The confidence loop. The simple, repeatable process that turns nervousness into muscle memory. Confidence isn't a switch you flick on. It's a habit you build. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. You push off, wobble, keep going, and each time your brain updates its prediction of what you can do. That updating is the loop. Here's how it works in plain terms. You act, you take a small, specific step towards something that scares you a little. Then you survive. You get through it without catastrophe. You adapt. You notice what worked, what didn't, and you tweak it. Your brain records that sequence and updates its internal model. Oh, I handled that. That update is a tiny vote for your capability. Each vote releases a bit of dopamine, a chemical high five that reinforces the behavior. Those tiny chemical reinforcements add up. That's why small wins matter more than big fantasies of overnight change. I'll make this real. The first time I gave a talk in front of 50 people, my voice shook and my palms sweated. I told a simple story, made one joke that landed, and finished. The next week I tried again, a little calmer. The loop had begun. Not because someone handed me courage, but because my brain had another data point. You did that before. The memory reduced the prediction error, the gap between what my brain feared and what actually happened. So the fear had less power next time. There's also a powerful feedback loop between posture and emotion. Stand tall, open your chest, and breathe slowly for even 30 seconds. Your nervous system responds. Your heart rate can steady, your breathing deepens, and stress hormones like cortisol decrease. It doesn't magically make you invincible. It's not pretending. It's reminding your body of a pattern. We've done this before, and we were okay. That reminder lowers the volume of anxiety and gives you clearer thinking to act again. So you don't wait for confidence to show up. You generate it by doing. Start with micro actions that are just outside your comfort zone. Say hello first, volunteer a short comment in a meeting, record 1 minute of video. Each small success is a loop completed. Track the wins, write them down, celebrate quietly, so your brain has evidence to call upon when the next challenge appears. The loop strengthens with feedback. Notice how posture affects feelings and how those feelings change posture. Use that to your advantage. Adopt confident body language before you speak. Take a slow, grounding breath, then act. Over time, the act, survive, adapt sequence rewires expectations. What once felt like faking becomes the rehearsal history your brain uses to say, "You've got this." Next, we'll take those micro actions and turn them into a weekly routine you can stick to, a practical plan to crank the confidence loop into high gear. Smile first, feel later. One small thing you can do before you even say a word: smile. It sounds almost too simple, but there's real biology behind it. The facial feedback hypothesis says the muscles in your face send signals back to your brain, specifically to the amygdala, which helps interpret emotion. So when you activate those smiling muscles, your brain starts to read the situation more positively. In plain terms, smile long enough and that fake smile often turns into a real one. I learned this the hard way on a day I was running late for an important meeting and felt that tight, clammy panic. I forced a tiny smile as I walked in, half hoping no one would notice my racing heart. Within a minute, my shoulders dropped a little. My voice steadied. The conversation took a warmer turn, and I actually began to enjoy the exchange. It wasn't pretending to be happy. It was biofeedback. My face set the emotional key, and everything else tuned to it. Here's how to use it in everyday life so it feels natural, not fake. Start small. You don't need a Broadway grin. A soft, slight upward curve at the corners of your mouth, a micro smile, is enough to send signals to your brain and the people in front of you. Hold it for a few seconds. If you're trying this in a meeting or a tense chat, let the smile stay for 10 to 20 seconds. That's often enough time for your body to begin shifting internally. Add the eyes. A real, warming smile nudges the muscles around your eyes too. You don't have to force squinting. Just let your gaze soften. People instantly pick up on warm eyes. Breathe and relax your jaw. Smiling tightens some muscles, but relaxing the rest prevents it from feeling strained. Take one calm inhale with the smile and exhale any leftover tightness. Use it as an opener. Before you speak in a difficult conversation, allow yourself that smile. It changes the tone before the first word lands, and others adjust unconsciously. This isn't about faking happiness or ignoring serious feelings. It's about using a simple biofeedback loop to steer your mood when you want to. If you're dealing with deep sadness or trauma, smiling alone won't fix that. But it can be a small, practical tool to help you engage with the world differently in the moment. Try it this week. Practice a micro smile before a call, before walking into a room, or when someone asks, "How are you?" Notice how the room and your own feelings shift. Up next, we'll look at how posture and breath reinforce that smile-first approach, making the change stick. Lower your voice, raise their respect. One of the simplest power moves most people never practice is lowering their voice. Authority doesn't shout, it drops volume. When you intentionally soften your sound, you slow the room down. People lean in. They listen. I learned this the hard way. Early in my career, I'd try to be louder than everyone else to be heard. It worked for 10 minutes, and then it just sounded tired. The people who actually took charge were the ones who spoke quietly, deliberately, like they were setting a calm default for everyone else. There's a reason for that. Deep frequencies register as calm and confidence in our brains. High volume reads as urgency. Your amygdala perks up, people feel pushed, and conversations turn reactive. Lower pitch and a slower delivery tell the listener there's no panic. The speaker knows what they're doing. It's not about dominance. It's about stillness. In high-stakes rooms, leaders who pause, drop their pitch, and then speak often gain control without raising their voice. The human brain reads calm as competence. How to actually do it? Breathe first. Before you answer, take a small, steady inhale into your diaphragm. That gives your voice support so you don't default to a higher, thin sound. Pause. Let the moment hang for a beat. Silence makes your next words weightier and automatically lowers how fast you speak. Lower your pitch by a half step. Don't force it. Think calm instead of deep. A relaxed throat produces lower frequencies more naturally than trying to shout low. Slow down. Stretch your sentences just enough that each word lands. People assume slower speech equals thoughtfulness, not weakness. Use fewer words. Short, decisive sentences paired with a quiet tone feel more authoritative than long, loud monologues. A quick drill. Say a sentence in your normal voice, then say it again 2 notches lower and at 80% of the volume. Record both. Listen back. Most people are shocked at how much more confident the lower version sounds. When others are loud, resist matching them. Let them peak, then lean in with quiet. It's like walking into a room where someone turns up the music. Instead of adding more noise, you put your palm on the speaker and the room notices the lack of sound. That contrast does the work for you. Make this part of everyday life. On a phone call, start your sentence after a 1-second pause. At home, try answering your kids' frantic calls with a calm, lower reply. It changes the interaction instantly. Mastering a quieter, steadier voice is one of the fastest ways to be taken seriously. Next, we'll use that stillness to structure your words so they land with even more force. The first word wins. Here's where the primacy effect does the heavy lifting. The brain grabs the very first piece of information it hears and uses that as an anchor, not just a starting point, but a lens for everything that follows. That's why introductions shape belief, headlines steer attention, and first impressions cling. The first thing you say carries weight. This isn't just theory. I remember a job interview early in my career where I walked in nervous and started with, "Sorry, I'm a bit scattered today." The room tightened. The rest of the interview went uphill from there, but that first sentence had already nudged everyone to expect uncertainty. Later, when I consciously tried a different approach, a calm, clear opener like, "Thanks for having me, I'm excited to share how I solved X problem," the tone changed immediately. People relaxed. Questions came with curiosity instead of skepticism. So how do you use that first word advantage? 3 practical moves. 1. Lead with clarity. Open with a simple frame of what's happening and why it matters. Instead of, I wanted to talk about something, try, "Today I'll show you one quick change that saves an hour each week." Clear frames reduce friction. They give the listener a mental map. 2. Layer warmth under the clarity. Clarity alone can sound robotic. Warmth is the emotional pitch that makes clarity persuasive. A small detail, a smile in your voice, a sincere thanks, or a quick human line like, "I know we're all busy," tells the brain it's safe to listen. The mind remembers tone as much as content. The first tone you project becomes the tone of the whole exchange. 3. Eliminate hedges and apologies. Those tiny qualifiers, "I think," "maybe," "sorry to bother you." Dilute your anchor. Replace them with concise statements. If you need to soften, use friendly language instead of uncertainty. Swap, "I'm not sure if this helps," for "this could help" by. Quick templates you can try. Meetings. Thanks everyone. Our goal today is to decide X in 30 minutes. Emails headlines. Quick question about project. Decision needed by Friday. Networking. Hi, I'm Name. I've been following your work on X. How did you start? Practice a short opener for common situations. Say it aloud, feel the breath and the smile behind it, and notice how it shifts your posture and confidence. The first word isn't magic, but used deliberately, it primes every conversation in your favor. Own the opener, and you own the room. The last word lingers. Think about the last thing you heard from someone before they walked out the door, hung up the phone, or closed the chat window. Chances are you can still hear it. Not the messy middle of the conversation, not the long explanations, but that final sentence. Psychologists call this the recency effect. Our memories give extra weight to endings. It's why the way you say goodbye matters more than the full conversation that came before. I remember once leaving a family dinner after a small argument about something silly. We'd gone back and forth for 20 minutes and it all blurred together. What I replayed on the drive home, though, was my sister's last line. "Take care, okay?" It was soft, quick, and a little unexpected. That tiny phrase rewrote the whole evening for me. It turned a tetchy exit into something tender. The fight didn't vanish, but the echo was kind, and that kindness stayed with me. That's the power here. Endings act like a frame around a photo. They highlight what you want someone to remember. So when you end a conversation, aim for a close rather than a cut. "I appreciate you" is small. "Thank you for sharing that" is small. "Let's pick this up tomorrow when we're less tired" is small. But each of those lines signals care, not dismissal. End softly, not vague and not passive-aggressive. Close with specifics or warmth. If it's a difficult conversation, acknowledge the tension and affirm the relationship. I'm glad we talked. I want to keep working on this with you. If it's a routine goodbye, tuck in gratitude. Thanks for this time. It meant a lot. Even on quick business calls, a phrase that closes rather than cuts. I'll follow up with the next steps. Leaves clarity and goodwill. People don't replay every sentence. They replay the fade out. That replay shapes how they feel about you and about the interaction. A kind ending edits memory into something better. It doesn't erase the hard parts, but it gives them context and a softer tone. So next time, pay attention to how you leave. Before you say the last word, ask, does this close the door gently or slam it? Choose a line that signals respect, gratitude, or intention. You'll be surprised how often that small, conscious choice changes the story people tell about you afterward. Ask for advice. Gain influence. Ask for advice. It's one of the simplest influence moves almost nobody uses deliberately. When you genuinely ask someone for help, two things happen. They feel useful, and they start to justify that effort by thinking you're worth it. That's the Ben Franklin effect in action. People who do favors for you tend to like you more because their brain resolves the cognitive dissonance by upgrading their view of you. Here's a quick, real-world way I've used it. A few months ago, I was preparing a talk and I hit a wall with the opening. Instead of polishing it alone, I messaged a colleague. Quick question. Which of these two opening lines grabs you more, A or B? I'm trying to land the tone in the first 30 seconds. That single, specific ask got them to read the draft and give detailed feedback. Not only did the talk improve, but that colleague started checking in later on other projects. They'd invested a little time, and because they'd helped, they felt attached to the outcome, and to me. Asking for advice also flatters people's intelligence without you having to say, you're smart. When you ask for a concrete perspective, how would you decide between these two options? Or, what detail would you cut to make this clearer? You implicitly acknowledge their judgment. The trick is sincerity. Vague praise or manipulative, help me so you like me bait doesn't work long term. Be specific. Ask a focused question that shows you actually value their experience. Make the question easy to answer but substantive enough that it requires thought. Instead of, what do you think of my presentation? Try, if you had 10 seconds to convince a skeptical manager, which slide would you use and why? That kind of ask invites ownership. When someone contributes, they form an emotional tie to the outcome. They've invested themselves, and influence grows from that shared investment, not from you trying to persuade them. A couple of quick rules to follow. Don't overuse the tactic. People can feel manipulated if every interaction is a favor request. Always follow up and show you acted on their advice, that closing the loop deepens the bond, and repay help when you can. Influence is reciprocal. Try this today. Pick one person you'd like closer to, a coworker, a neighbor, someone in your network, and ask one precise, sincere question that invites their expertise. Watch how the dynamic shifts when they've helped shape your next step. Echo their words. When they finish a sentence, don't rush to fix or respond. Try echoing one or two of their key words back to them. It's a tiny move with a big effect. Say someone says, I'm so burned out from work, and you answer, burned out. That single word tells them you were listening, and it invites them to keep going. It's not parroting. It's showing you heard the emotion behind the words. I remember a time my partner came home and said, I just can't get ahead. Instead of offering solutions, I said, can't get ahead. They sighed and suddenly shared details they hadn't before. That one echoed phrase opened the floodgates. Neuroscience explains why. Mirroring keeps dopamine and oxytocin flowing. The brain's little rewards for connection and trust. When you echo, you light up those circuits. People relax. They feel safer to keep talking. How to do it naturally. Pick one or two words that hold the weight of their sentence. Emotion words, problem words, or repeated phrases. Say them with curiosity, not mockery. Let your tone be soft and open. Follow the echo with silence. Give them room to expand. The silence combined with your echo is often when the real story comes out. Short examples you can try. Speaker: I'm drowning in emails. Listener: drowning? Pause. Speaker: this project feels impossible. Listener: impossible. Pause. Speaker: I'm embarrassed about what I said. Listener: embarrassed. Pause. Make it personal. When my dad first used this on me, he didn't try to fix anything. He'd simply repeat, embarrassed? And I felt like the person who mattered, not the problem. That feeling of being heard is what people crave more than agreement. A few cautions. Don't overdo it. If every sentence gets mirrored, it sounds robotic. Avoid parroting as mockery. If you use an amused or skeptical tone, it will backfire. Combine echoing with genuine follow-ups. Burned out? What feels the worst about it? That keeps the conversation moving from being heard to being understood. Try this today. The next time someone unloads, choose one word to reflect back. Watch how it changes the energy. Often, an echoed word is an invitation, and the person will step through it. Speak slower to sound smarter. You probably already know the feeling. Your heart races, words pile up, and before you know it, you're talking at lightning speed. Fast talk doesn't just sound anxious, it reads as anxious. When you rush, listeners peg you as nervous or unprepared. Slow down, and everything changes. Slow talk feels deliberate. It signals confidence. There's a reason for that. People interpret pacing as processing power. If you speak too quickly, the brain assumes you're trying to outrun its ability to follow you. But when you slow your rhythm, even just a little, the listener has time to digest each idea. In fact, studies in communication show that speech slowed by about 15% increases perceived credibility. Your message doesn't only become clearer, it becomes believable. Let me be honest, I used to cram sentences together like I was racing a deadline. In client calls, I'd blurt facts, then watch eyes glaze over. The shift came when I started thinking of pauses as part of my vocabulary. Pauses are not empty space. They're punctuation for the ear. Give your words room and people begin to feel them, not just hear them. Here are practical, easy tweaks you can try right now. Breathe before you speak. A calm inhale sets your tempo. Try one deliberate breath before answering a question. Aim to slow your normal pace by roughly 15%. If that sounds vague, use a timer or record yourself and compare. You'll hear the difference. Insert short pauses after key points. Say the sentence, then hold for one beat. Let the idea land. Break long sentences into chunks. Shorter phrases are easier to follow and naturally slow you down. Mark your script with slashes or brackets where you want to pause. When you're live, those little cues keep you honest. Practice with a metronome app or read aloud and count silently, 1, 2, between phrases. Use gestures to pace yourself. A hand movement can anchor a pause and make the rhythm feel intentional, not awkward. To make it relatable, next time you tell a story, try this quick experiment. Tell it at your usual speed, then tell it again, 15% slower. Notice whether your listeners lean in more, ask follow-ups, or repeat a line back. That leaning in is trust-forming. The brain trusts what it can follow easily. Slowing your rhythm doesn't mute your energy, it focuses it. The space you leave becomes part of the message. When you make those pauses purposeful, your words gain weight. In the next part, we'll take that intentional pacing and add vocal color so your slower delivery never sounds dull. Frame it as a choice. Building on that idea, here's a simple mindset shift that makes persuasion feel like collaboration. Frame it as a choice. People hate being ordered. I know I do. And when I tried telling my teenager what to do, the instant "you should" turned into a stubborn wall. But when I started offering options, do you want to do it before or after dinner? The fight evaporated. Why? Because choice gives people a sense of control. Psychologists call this autonomy bias. When we feel in charge, we're more likely to cooperate. So instead of pushing with commands, present possibilities. Swap "you should" for "you could." Try "you could finish that report today," or break it into 2 chunks and do a bit now and a bit tomorrow. That small change makes the person feel respected, not managed. This works in real-world moments: negotiating a raise, asking your partner to take on chores, or getting your kid to practice piano. In a negotiation, instead of "we need this by Friday," say, "Would you prefer to deliver a draft by Wednesday or the final version by Friday?" In parenting, replace "do your homework" with "would you rather start with math or reading?" You're not giving infinite power, you're guiding it. It also applies to self-talk. The voice in my head used to nag, "You should be exercising," and that guilt pushed me into avoidance. Once I reframed it, I could go for a 20-minute walk now or try a quick workout later. It felt like a decision I could make, not a judgment I had to escape. Choice reduces resistance. A few practical ways to use this. Offer limited options. 2 or 3 choices work better than open-ended freedom. Too many choices overwhelm. Use the "or" nudge. Present alternatives that both move toward your goal. Would you like to start now or after a short break? Give an opt-out. Saying "you could also say no if that doesn't work" paradoxically increases buy-in. Make options meaningful. Don't pretend choices exist if you'll reject certain answers. A quick script you can borrow. "I'd love your help with this. Would you rather take the first half or handle the follow-up calls afterward?" It's collaborative, actionable, and it points to the desired outcome without dragging people into conflict. Try this in one interaction today. Notice how the other person's posture, tone, or yes/no changes when they feel like the decision maker. Choice softens resistance. Freedom opens doors. Coercion can't. Up next, we'll look at phrasing that builds trust once you've offered those choices. Ask for a small favor. Here's something counterintuitive. If you want someone to like you more, ask them to do something small for you. It's called the Ben Franklin effect, named after the guy who noticed that when someone does you a favor, they start to convince themselves they like you because they helped you. Crazy, right? But it's real, and it works because of how people bond. Let me make this personal. A while back, I was nervous about a new idea and needed feedback. Instead of pitching the whole thing, I sent one friend a single paragraph and asked, "Mind reading this for 30 seconds and telling me what jumps out?" He replied with 3 lines, and afterward he kept suggesting improvements and even introduced me to someone who could help. Because he'd invested a tiny bit of effort, his brain treated that investment like a vote for me. That's the Ben Franklin effect in action. Ask small, not huge favors, not "manage my whole project," but "can you give me one quick idea?" or "could you share this with one person who might care?" The request should be effortless, a few seconds of someone's time. When people invest even a tiny bit, their brain releases oxytocin, the trust chemical. Oxytocin links your face and presence to safety and connection. That's why people bond through participation, not performance. You don't need to dazzle someone, you need to let them take part. Think of asking as an invitation to join your story. Instead of performing for an audience, you're handing someone a role. It might be as small as asking a coworker to glance at a slide, asking a neighbor to watch your plant for a weekend, or asking a viewer to tell you which thumbnail they prefer. Participation makes them care. It turns passive observers into tiny collaborators. A few practical tips. Keep it specific, make it easy, and be honest about why it matters to you. Don't manipulate, people sense that. And don't overuse it. Favors should be occasional and genuine. Always say thanks and follow up so they see the difference their help made. That follow-through reinforces the positive loop. They helped, it mattered, and now they feel closer to you. So next time you want to deepen a connection, resist the urge to impress and ask for one small thing instead. Up next, we'll explore how to turn those small moments of participation into long-term trust without coming across needy. Give the gift first. One simple habit shifts relationships faster than any clever pitch. Give the gift first. Think about the last time someone unexpectedly helped you, held a door, sent a useful article, introduced you to a person who mattered. It felt good, right? That's reciprocity at work. Our brains are wired to match generosity because back when humans depended on each other to survive, cooperation wasn't optional. It was life or death. So when you offer something, even something small, you trigger a kind of subconscious bookkeeping. It isn't a ledger you see, it's a feeling. This person helped me. They're on my side. That feeling creates a gentle, powerful pressure to respond in kind. It's not manipulation if your intent is genuine, it's balance. When you give without immediately asking for anything, you remove the first barrier of suspicion. You stop being a competitor and start being an ally. People relax, they share more, and trust grows much faster than it would if you'd started by asking for favors. I remember early in my career I needed feedback on a pitch deck. Instead of cold emailing a senior designer asking for help, I spent an afternoon creating a quick one-pager summarizing a trend I'd noticed and sent it with a note. Thought you might find this interesting. 2 days later, I had a detailed critique of my deck and an invitation to collaborate on a project. The first gesture cost me time, not influence, but it bought trust. Giving doesn't have to be grand. Compliments that are specific, introductions with context, a quick favor, sharing a resource. These small deposits build a lot of relational interest. The key is authenticity. If you're giving purely to extract later, people sense it. Genuine generosity signals you see the relationship as mutual, not transactional. A few practical ways to start. Send something useful without strings. An article, a template, a contact. Praise details, not generic platitudes, but real observations. Offer time, a 15-minute call to listen, not to sell. Make introductions with a clear reason they'll benefit. Keep boundaries. Giving first doesn't mean becoming everyone's free resource. It means leading with generosity while being wise about your energy. Try this week. Pick one person you want to connect with and give them something that helps right now. Notice how the conversation shifts. The mind logs you as an ally and influence. It multiplies. Let them talk first. Think about the last time someone jumped in to answer before you finished your sentence. That tiny seizure of air changes everything. They've just told you where they stand. Letting others speak first does the opposite. It quietly hands you power. I used to hate silence. In meetings, I would fill gaps with opinions I hadn't fully thought through, convinced that being first meant being bold. Then I started a simple experiment. I stopped speaking until the other person had finished and the room was actually quiet. The result was surprising. People revealed more. They corrected themselves. They gave away priorities and fears. That information, what psychologists call the information advantage, lets you shape your response instead of reacting to assumptions. Silence in conversation often feels like respect. If you listen while others speak, you're telling them you value their view. That disarms defensiveness. It also means they've already revealed their hand. What matters to them, what they won't compromise on, where they're bluffing. In a salary talk, a client negotiation, or a family dispute, that little pause before you speak becomes your research time. Practical tip: when someone finishes, don't rush to fill the gap. Breathe, count to 3. Use that fraction of a second to sort what you heard into 3 buckets. facts, feelings, and asks. Facts are concrete items, dates, numbers, conditions. Feelings are the tone and emotion, stress, urgency, confidence. Asks are what they actually want, sometimes buried under a story. When you reply, after that short pause, your answer is more precise because it addresses all three. Listening isn't passivity, it's positioning. I'll never forget a client meeting where the CEO launched into a long rant about budget constraints. I could have immediately defended my proposal. Instead, I let him finish, nodded, and asked, "What outcome do you see as non-negotiable here?" He was surprised, recalibrated, and ended up revealing a timeline I hadn't known. With that piece of information, my counteroffer hit the mark. Faster acceptance, less back and forth. Another tip: ask one clarifying question before offering solutions. It signals engagement and gently forces the speaker to refine their own position. People often clarify their own thinking when asked to explain. Suddenly, problems become smaller and options clearer, and you don't have to guess what matters most. This technique works anywhere, at the dinner table, in a performance review, or on a first date. Let them talk first. Listen like your response depends on it, because it does. When you answer last, you answer accurately, with empathy and leverage. That's how silence becomes strategic, how listening becomes leadership. Use silence to own space. There's a difference between being loud and being present. I learnt that the hard way, filling every gap with words because I thought silence meant I'd lost control. In team meetings, I'd rush to speak. In arguments, I'd pile on explanations. What I didn't realize was that the room was reading my hurry as uncertainty. When I started holding my tongue, people started leaning in. A room respects whoever's comfortable with silence. That's not mystical. It's practical. When you don't race to fill the air, the energy shifts. Filling air shows insecurity. Holding it shows composure. Try this next time someone makes a claim you don't like. Stop. Breathe. Let the sentence sit between you. Watch what happens. The other person will often keep talking to fill that gap, or they'll reframe, or they'll reveal something you can use. Silence acts like a psychological mirror. People project into it and reveal more than they planned. In tense moments, pause. Not an awkward, shuffling pause, an intentional one. Count to 3 silently. That tiny space does 2 things. It gives your brain a beat to choose the right response, and it forces everyone else to feel the weight of their words. You'll be surprised how often a heated comment turns into a clarification when nobody piles on immediately. Quiet confidence recalibrates a room without raising volume. You don't need to stare people down. Keep open but relaxed body language. Shoulders down, hands visible, steady breath. Your face should be neutral, not blank. If you look like you're listening, people assume you're in control. Use silence as punctuation. Say one clear sentence, then let it land. Let it echo. It amplifies whatever you just said. There are practical ways to practice this. In low-stakes conversations, deliberately pause before answering. Start with 1 or 2 seconds, then work up to 3. In meetings, after you present a point, stop talking and wait. In negotiations, refuse to immediately justify a number. Instead, watch the reaction. On calls, hold for a beat before unmuting to speak. If you catch yourself filling silence with or a long explanation, notice it without self-judgment and try again next time. One caveat: silence is a tool, not a weapon. Overuse can feel cold or manipulative. Use it to create space, not to punish. If someone is visibly anxious, soften the pause with a reassuring nod or a gentle question. But in most situations, owning silence gives you more influence than the loudest voice in the room. Try it tonight. Let one sentence sit. Count to 3. See what fills the silence. Act like you already belong. If you've been practicing presence, the next move is simple. Act like you already belong. Sounds like a trick, but social psychology backs it up. Our brains are wired to mirror status cues, posture, pace, tone, and other people pick up on those signals before they even hear what you say. That's the self-confirming bias at work. If you behave like you fit, the room's perception reshapes itself to match. Here's what that looks like in real life. A few years ago, I walked into a packed meetup where I didn't know a single person. My first instinct was to shrink, shoulders tight, eyes darting, hands jammed in pockets. Nobody came over. Then I tried something different. I slowed my breathing, squared my shoulders just enough to feel steady, and walked as if I belonged there, not puffed up, just familiar with the space. Within minutes, people made eye contact. A group made room for me, and a conversation slid in. I hadn't changed my resume, but I changed the energy I carried, and the environment followed. So how do you do this without sounding fake or arrogant? Think familiarity, not dominance. Walk like you own the path in the least aggressive way. Steady steps, steady pace. Don't hurry past people. Move with intention. Posture matters. Open chest, relaxed shoulders, chin level. This posture signals ease and invites respect before words start. Use natural eye contact. Look people in the eye for a beat longer than feels comfortable. Then let your gaze soften. It shows engagement, not interrogation. Take appropriate space. If someone offers a chair, don't crawl into the corner. Sit where conversation flows and maintain an open posture. No crossed arms, no phone shield. Voice and cadence. Speak a touch slower and a touch lower than your anxious default. Pauses are powerful. They show you're comfortable being heard. Try a simple micro-practice, the doorway pause. Before entering any new room, stop at the threshold for 3 calm breaths. Ground your feet, lift your chest fractionally, and picture the space welcoming you. Then step in with that same rhythm. It's a tiny ritual that trains your body to bring familiarity into new places. Remember, confidence isn't something you summon out of nowhere. It's comfort made visible. You're not pretending to be someone else. You're giving others permission to see the relaxed, competent version of you that already exists. The more often you act like you belong, the more the world will treat you that way, and your brain will start to believe it too. The power of we. I used to think words were just words, until one tiny change stopped so many arguments before they even started. Swapping you for we isn't grammar trickery. It's a social cue that flips resistance into alliance. Try it once and you notice the room shift. There's actually a chemical reason this works. Collective language triggers oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone. Oxytocin makes people feel safer, more trusting, and more willing to cooperate. When you say, "We'll wrap this up," your brain hears, "You're not alone." It relaxes. When you say, "You need to finish," it hears, "You're under threat." It tenses. Let me make it concrete. I used to say to my partner, "You never remember the trash." That got defensive fast. Swapping it to, "Let's make sure the trash is handled tonight," changed the whole energy. Suddenly, it was a problem we solved together, not a blame game. At work, telling a team, "You need to hit this deadline," puts pressure on individuals. Saying, "We'll prioritize this deadline," invites everyone in. People start offering help instead of excuses. Short examples you can borrow. Instead of, "You need to finish this," try, "We'll wrap this up." Instead of, "You missed the meeting," try, "How can we make sure we're all on the same page next time?" Instead of, "Handle it," try, "Let's handle it together." The shift is tiny, often just one syllable, but massive in effect. The brain's threat detectors calm down when social cues promise companionship. Inclusion is one of the simplest, most humane forms of persuasion there is. People want to belong. They'll move mountains for someone who makes them feel like part of a team. A quick rule of thumb: use "we" when you genuinely mean it. People sense performative perks. Using collective language to dodge responsibility or manipulate will backfire. Real "we" builds trust. Fake "we" erodes it. So next time you're about to give an order, lodge a complaint, or push for a deadline, pause for a second. Reframe it with "we" and watch shoulders drop and doors open. That small linguistic nudge sets the stage for stronger collaboration, and it's exactly the kind of shift the next technique will amplify. Ask, "What made you say that?" I've used this line more times than I can count. With my partner when a comment felt sharp, with a coworker after a tense email, even with my teenager when a single sentence set off an argument. The magic isn't in the words alone. It's in the attitude behind them. This question is one of the gentlest moves in communication. It invites someone to explain, not to defend. Say it calmly. Keep your voice steady, your eyebrows relaxed. The point is to open a window, not to slam the door. When someone explains their reasoning, three things usually happen. They slow down, they organize their thoughts, and they often see gaps they hadn't noticed. People self-correct when they get space to reflect. That's how hostility turns into curiosity. Here's a short example. Two teammates, deadlines pressure mounting. You missed the milestone again. Immediate defensiveness. Instead, what made you say that? Pause. I assumed because the report wasn't uploaded. Oh, I couldn't upload because the server crashed. I also flagged you in the chat. Instead of escalation, you get context. You also show respect. You're not attacking what they said. You're exploring why they said it. Curiosity de-escalates faster than logic. When someone is angry, switching to facts or proof often fuels the fire. But asking about their reasoning moves the conversation into the part of the brain that processes causes and solutions. It slows anger and opens the reasoning centers. A few practical tips. Timing matters. Don't ask this in the heat of a shout. Wait for a breath or a pause. Tone matters more than wording. The same sentence, asked with sarcasm, will land as a trap. Ask it with genuine interest. Follow up by paraphrasing. So you felt excluded because X. That shows you listened and keeps the tone collaborative. Use a softer variant for text. I'm curious. What made you say that? That keeps the intent clear without sounding confrontational. Be careful not to interrogate. The goal is an invitation, not an interrogation. If someone is defensive, back off. I'm just trying to understand. Thank them for explaining. That small courtesy lowers defenses. Try it next time a comment rubs you the wrong way. Ask, what made you say that? And then actually listen. You'll be surprised how often curiosity dissolves conflict faster than correction. Smile with your eyes. Think of the last time someone's smile really reached you. Chances are it wasn't just their teeth or the shape of their mouth. It was the way their eyes softened, the little crinkle at the corners that said, I mean this. That tiny movement is the Duchenne smile in action, named after the neurologist who mapped the muscles behind genuine emotion. It's subtle, but it reads louder than any line of words. Here's the simple truth. Real smiles live in the eyes, not the mouth. Anyone can stretch their lips into a grin for a photo or a polite hello, but the brain is wired to spot the difference. The orbicularis oculi muscles around the eyes contract only when warmth is authentic, and that contraction, those crow's feet, that gentle narrowing, signals safety and connection. We register it instantly, often before we even consciously think about it. I remember meeting a nervous coworker for the first time. She walked in with a bright, practiced smile that didn't quite land. Then she relaxed, actually laughed at something small I said, and everything changed. The same face I'd been evaluating seconds earlier now felt inviting. That shift came from her eyes. It told me she was present, not performing. In social moments like job interviews, first dates, or introducing yourself to a neighbor, that difference matters more than you think. Smiling with your eyes is emotion made visible. It's not about faking warmth, it's about letting a genuine reaction show. And if you're worried about being too much or appearing staged, remember the effect is small but magnetic. A real eye smile doesn't dominate a room. It invites people closer. If you want to practice, think of a quick, honest image that makes you genuinely happy. A memory, a tiny private joke, someone you love. Let that feeling ripple upward. you'll notice your eyes soften before your mouth follows. Another trick is to hold a gentle half smile for a few seconds and let your gaze narrow slightly, as if you're focusing on someone you like. Check yourself in a mirror or record a short video. With a little attention, this muscle memory becomes natural. In conversation, the payoff is immediate. People relax, shoulders drop, hands unclench. They sense they're safe and seen. That's the quiet power of a Duchenne smile, a small gesture that creates real warmth and connection. Pause before you answer. One simple habit separates people who sound rushed from people who sound in control: pausing before you answer. I used to fill every silence. In meetings, during arguments, even on casual calls, I'd blurt replies to prove I was engaged. It made me feel sharp, but looking back, it often landed as reactive, defensive, or worse, dismissive. Then I started forcing a tiny delay. Half a second. That tiny space changed everything. That micro delay does more than stop a filler word. It signals active listening. When you take that breath, you're not waiting to speak. You're making room to think. People notice. The other person hears the care in your tone, sees you aren't on autopilot, and instinctively relaxes. In leadership psychology, that half second is a power move. It communicates authority without aggression. Your calm says, "This isn't urgent, this is important." Practically, how do you build this into conversations? Start with awareness. The next time someone asks something, at work, at home, on a date, train yourself to breathe in and count silently to 2 before answering. 2 beats, not 2 full seconds. That tiny hold activates your prefrontal cortex to organize a considered response. If you're worried the silence will feel awkward, bridge it, nod, make eye contact, or say, "Good question," and then breathe. You're buying your brain time and signaling respect for the speaker. There are moments where the half second becomes a full second, and that's okay. Tough questions, emotional conversations, or unexpected criticism often deserve a longer pause. Use those seconds to name what you heard. "I'm hearing X, and I want to be sure I respond thoughtfully." Paraphrasing does 2 things. It fills the silence with listening, and it gives you an anchor to structure an answer. Practice makes this automatic. Try this exercise. During a phone call, deliberately count 1-2 before replying to any question. Record a few conversations or practice with a friend who asks rapid-fire questions. Notice how your responses shift. Fewer ums, more confidence, and a calmer tone. People won't say the pause is powerful, but they will notice the effect. They'll take you more seriously, and you'll feel steadier. Finally, remember, power doesn't live in volume or speed. It lives in the breath before your words. That small, intentional pause turns reaction into response. Keep practicing it, and you'll find your conversations, professional and personal, starting to feel a little more thoughtful and a lot more in your control. The spotlight effect. Which brings us to something that changed the way I take social risks: the spotlight effect. For the longest time, I walked around like I was on stage, convinced every stumble, every awkward laugh, every tiny wardrobe mishap was on permanent loop for everyone else. In reality, people are not tuned into you the way you imagine. They're busy replaying their own lines. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect, the tendency to overestimate how much others notice us. I remember a time I spilled coffee on my shirt before an important meeting. I felt mortified, convinced the entire room would judge me. I ended up sitting through the meeting, assuming everyone was silently cataloguing my incompetence. Afterward, someone complimented the presentation and didn't even notice the stain. Later that day, I realized I'd wasted mental energy on something no one else cared about. That tiny, embarrassing moment became a lesson. Most people aren't watching you closely enough to remember. Here's why that fact is liberating. When you accept that others' attention is fleeting, you stop performing for an audience that isn't watching. That removes a pressure valve. You can try things, Ask the question in a meeting, tell the joke, sing badly in the car, because the cost of failure is much lower than your fear imagines. You'll be surprised how often your mistake is unremarked or quickly forgotten. Try this simple experiment. Deliberately do one small, slightly uncomfortable thing this week that you'd normally avoid because of embarrassment. Wear a bold color, ask a question you're unsure about in a group, or post a short video of yourself. Observe what actually happens. Most likely, awkwardness will pass fast. Nobody will remember the detail in 24 hours, and you'll feel braver for having tried. A couple of practical habits help make this stick. First, the reality check. Ask yourself, what's the worst realistic outcome? Then ask, will anyone remember this tomorrow? Chances are the answer is no. Second, keep a small exposure log. Write down the risks you took and the real outcomes. Over time, you'll have evidence that most fears are exaggerated. Third, talk to a friend about their moments of self-consciousness. You'll be amazed how normal and forgettable their mishaps are. Confidence doesn't need to be manufactured overnight. It grows naturally as you stop performing for an imagined audience and start trying things because you want to. The spotlight effect isn't about ignoring social cues or becoming reckless. It's about reclaiming energy you spend on fear and putting it into acting, learning, and experimenting. Once you see how little people actually notice, freedom follows. Try it, and notice how much lighter you feel. Let them say no. Think about the last time someone tried to hustle you into a decision. The tight smile, the rushing, the assumption that you'd say yes. How did that feel? Tense, defensive, maybe even resentful. Now imagine the opposite. Someone leans back, meets your eyes, and says, "You can say no if this isn't right." Weirdly, that tiny invitation relaxes you. That's not accidental. Letting someone refuse activates what psychologists call autonomy bias, the deep human need to feel in control of our own choices. When you offer that control, people don't run with it to be obstinate. They relax enough to listen. I learned this the hard way in a job negotiation. I used to push hard for what I wanted, assuming pressure produced results. Then I tried a different line with a hiring manager. "If this role or these terms don't fit, please tell me. I'd rather know now." She blinked, smiled, and we had a much longer, more honest conversation. A week later, I had a better offer. Not because I coerced, but because I made it safe for her to disagree, and that safety made cooperation possible. Here's the paradox. Freedom breeds agreement. If people feel coerced, their first instinct is to resist. If they feel free, they'll often choose to cooperate. So, in persuasion, offer the no. Say phrases like, "You can say no if this isn't right. If this doesn't feel like a fit, tell me honestly. Feel free to say no. I won't take it personally." Tone matters as much as words. Make it genuine, brief, and nonchalant. Avoid follow-up pressure the moment they hesitate. Pause. Let silence do the work. When you give space, people test the boundaries of that freedom and often come back with a yes that actually means yes. This works everywhere. At work when proposing ideas, in relationships when asking for favors, with friends when suggesting plans, and even with children. I've seen parents ask their kids to help with chores and add, "You can say no, but tell me why," which opens a surprising dialogue instead of a shut-down tantrum. The safest agreements you'll get are from people who know they can still disagree. That safety signals respect, and respect makes trust grow faster than any clever tactic. So start offering the no. Let control be something you give away, not grab. When people feel free to refuse, they're much more likely to choose to join you. And that's the heart of real, lasting persuasion. Be interested, not interesting. I used to think the trick was to be interesting. At networking events, I'd rehearse the perfect story, drop the funniest line, try to land the cleverest take. Most of the time, it felt like two people performing on a tiny stage, both waiting for the other to clap. Those conversations fizzled. Nothing stuck. The reality, most conversations fail because both sides are auditioning. Real charisma isn't performance, it's curiosity. Think about the last time someone really listened to you, when they made space for you to finish a sentence, when they asked a follow-up that showed they were actually paying attention. You remember that feeling, right? That's not just nostalgia. Your brain rewards being heard with dopamine. Feeling seen lights you up. That glow is what people remember, not the witty thing you said. So how do you turn audition mode off and curiosity mode on? First, ask questions that invite more than yes or no. Instead of, "What do you do?" try, "What about your work makes you lose track of time?" Instead of jumping to the next anecdote, wait. Listen without waiting to reply. The pause is where the honest stuff lives. Second, notice the details everyone else skips. Maybe someone fiddles with a bracelet when they talk about their dad. Maybe they mention a hometown in passing. Those tiny clues are gold. Name them. "You just mentioned your brother. What's that story?" Or, "You smiled when you said that. What's going on there?" Observations show you're present. Questions show you care. Third, make your attention visible. Small things, leaning in, keeping eye contact, nodding, reflecting back one sentence, signal that you're tuned in. You don't have to be solemn. Curiosity can be playful. A short summary like, "So you started that business because you got frustrated with X." Let someone know they were understood. A practical habit. After someone answers, ask one factual follow-up and one emotional follow-up. Example, "How did you manage that?" Fact. And, "How did that feel?" Emotion. The emotional follow-up is where connection happens. Finally, resist the urge to top every story. When you're trying to be the interesting one, you steal the spotlight. When you're interested, you hand it over and people lean in. They remember how seen they felt. That's the fastest path to real connection. End with a compliment. So here's one of the simplest, most underused moves. End with a compliment. Memory favors the end. Whatever tone you leave lingers. If you close a conversation with warmth, that warmth becomes the headline your brain files away. Science backs it up. Compliments trigger oxytocin, which lowers tension and opens people up. But there's a catch. Don't flatter. Notice. Make it specific, small, and genuine. Instead of "great job," try, "You handled that question so calmly. I could tell you'd thought it through." Rather than "You're amazing," say, "Thanks for bringing the folder. That detail kept the meeting on track." Those tiny, accurate observations feel real. They tell the other person you were paying attention. I want to share a quick personal example. After a rough parent-teacher conference last year, instead of walking out awkwardly, I said to the teacher, "I appreciate how you explained his booster plan. It made me feel hopeful." It was short, true, and it shifted the energy. We left on the same page, and weeks later, when I ran into her, the conversation resumed warmly. That's the power of the final note. How to craft one on the fly. Look for effort. You stayed with that idea even when it got messy. That steadiness helped. Name an observable behavior. You asked really clear questions today. Tie it to impact. Because you summarized, we could decide faster. Avoid cliches that read like flattery. "You're just the best," or "You always." Those exaggerations sound performative. If you can't find something honest, thank them for one small thing. Their time, their patience, their clarity. Tone matters more than length. Say it warmly, not loudly. Timing and context matter too. After a disagreement, a small nod to effort can be reparative. "I know this was hard. Thanks for hearing me out." In work settings, that piece of data you pulled saved us time. With friends, "I loved how you listened tonight. It felt safe." With kids, "I noticed you tried again." That took courage. Remember, long after the words fade, the tone stays. End with grace, and the story of you finishes as generous, thoughtful, and present in their mind. Keep that image in mind. Then try ending your next conversation with one true, specific compliment. Up next, we'll look at a quick formula to turn any closing line into one of these small, powerful compliments.